All right. Well, Mark is back here on the Football Lounge. We had a brief interview show with Sean Tufts a couple days ago that we wanted to get in before
Glad
Cut
you
Day,
got to
which
do that.
happened today. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And some extra like insight into the day in the life of like a football player who is trying to make the team, a football player who makes the team, and is comfortable throughout the season. Like he's lived a lot of different perspectives in the NFL in the short amount of time he was there. So I thought that was really interesting to get his take. And today was it cut day, 4:00 Eastern time on Tuesday, August 27th, excuse me. The NFL teams, all 32 of them, had to trim their rosters from 90 to 53. So we have our initial 53-man rosters set across the NFL. Not too many crazy cuts or anything like that. We do have A.J. Dillon and Elijah Mitchell going on season-ending IR.
Bummer for both the Ravens and the Packers. That hurts.
That's brutal. And we're going to get into our AFC prediction today, previewing the entire AFC, looking at divisional standings, full season records, playoff seedings, the whole gamut we're going to get to here shortly. And among them are going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, who have brought back Mr. Juju Smith-Schuster, but out goes the Kadarius Toney experiment. What a fall from grace since being a first-round selection for the New York Giants just a few years ago. Wild stuff. And this has been all over Twitter today. That's been the big one I've seen.
And Juju, remember, wasn't in camp for anyone. He was cut by the Patriots months ago. And so for him to get this call and to find this opportunity, I think it says two things. One, obviously, that the Chiefs believe in him in their system being productive. And two, the Chiefs are really worried about Rashee Rice playing football and how much football he's going to get actually to play this year. And Toney,
and Hollywood Brown is hurt to start.
And Hollywood Brown,
how many games is he going to be out?
Yeah, and I think with Toney, I think it just is like they gave him every chance, they gave him every opportunity. And what sucks for a play like Toney, and this is the truth of it. I mean, we make fun of him. He made a lot of funny boneheaded plays and stuff like that. But what really does suck is like if you 10 years ago were a first-round talent who had to fall from grace but were picked up by the Patriots, it felt like, oh, you could rehab your career, right? And then if you left the Patriots, if they cut you, it's like, yeah, your career's over. And the Chiefs are now that team, right? So if you can't make it with the Chiefs as an offensive talent, it's
especially in that wide receiver room. I mean, you mentioned it. Yeah. There was a lot of opportunity for Kadarius Toney. Yeah. I mean, they were begging for him to be a viable candidate among them.
It wouldn't shock me if he finds his way to play football this year, like on a roster, because teams have injuries. But he'll be a first guy to call type of thing. But I don't think it's shocking to anyone that Toney is out. I think a little shocking to me. I forgot about Juju. I'm like, all of a sudden they say Juju's name come back to KC. He had a good year. Was it 800 something yards, like 8 touchdown catches, something like that? And that got him the big contract with New England last offseason, which he only lasted one season in New England. So, Kansas City, his performance there got him paid. Now he's going back to Kansas City for nothing, but he still got the money and the bag. So a good situation for Juju Smith-Schuster.
It is. I mean, he's at the point now. I mean, he's 27, and he's definitely fallen off the last couple of years in terms of productivity. And
him and Chase Claypool, like 5 years ago, that was 4 years ago. That was an elite receiving core in the AFC, and now both of those guys are barely relevant.
Yeah, I mean, people forget too. Juju was 20 when he came into the league. He was a really young player his rookie year, and so he's been in the league 7 seasons already at 27 years old. And so, he does have a lot of wear and tear, and it's he's kind of having the Allen Robinson years now.
Allen Robinson just got cut,
and he just got cut. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Or are you just gonna be like a reliable kind of like check down, third down kind of guy, because the speed isn't there anymore. But
injuries caught up with A-Rob. That's a bummer.
They did. It was it's unfortunate to see what became of him.
Because at his peak, he was extremely, extremely fun top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, with some bad quarterback play all throughout his career, and made himself into a really solid player. But yeah, well, enough of those initial housekeeping items. Let's get to it. Our AFC predictions for the 2024 season. I'm waiting to see Aaron Rodgers also bleach his hair,
Yeah.
just to feel young again. You know, uh,
You know,
intimidate Joe Burrow a little bit, if you will.
the Jets are going to be, I think, a fun team to talk about as we go through this. I also want to quickly
Yes.
mention for everyone out there, if you're like me and you haven't done your fantasy football draft yet, I have not next week. I think you're crazy if you do it before the final preseason game. It's so crazy that they do this so early. But the pup list today was huge. We didn't really mention it at the top of the show, but I don't remember a time previously where it's like all the pups got announced on one day. It felt like today was also the pup announced day. So just check that list. Check those Adam Schefter tweets, because guys like TJ Hawkinson and Nick Chubb starting the season on IR are certainly, I mean, on the pup list, meaning they're going to miss the first 4 games at least. Certainly something to keep an eye out for as you're heading into draft night.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, your point is well taken. I think this is more that I've seen this year than in years past, but it's definitely a strategic move as well to be able to have more guys on your roster, essentially.
I didn't realize Higbee was the Rams tight end is also starting in the pup list.
Oh, I didn't notice.
That really got me today too, because I was like, I was kind of targeting him because I think the Rams have a good year, and I was like, that hurts my Rams number 2 seed in the NFC prediction from last week.
Well, if they're on the pup list,
it's just
you're right. Game. They can't be activated the first 4 games. I didn't realize that. See, those are these little rules. Like, if you're on IR, you can be activated for the first 8. I think
it's a way for them to keep them on the roster without cutting them, without putting them on IR. It's kind of the halfway point, right? It's like IR's the whole season. This is. Hey, we need just some more time for these guys.
So they also have IR designated to returns. It's
there's nuances to get guys playing time. So we'll jump into it, but it is something to think about. You know what I mean? You're some key players. I think it was Odell Beckham Jr., maybe with the Dolphins too, even. So maybe that affects the Dolphins record here as we get into it. But Dan, we said it last week, the AFC, this seemed tougher to go through. And you mentioned it in the pregame before we started going live here. A lot of it has to do with schedule in the AFC, who's playing who and when they're playing them. Some teams that I don't believe in they got some incredible scheduling breaks.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when I looked through the comprehensive schedules for each team, how much it actually affected what my preconceptions going in were.
Oh yeah.
So there are some teams that actually surprised me in terms of I just felt that their schedule was too easy to not put them in the mix. Others I was like, shoot, I mean, I had them as like a 12-win team, but this schedule is way tougher than I thought, so I might have to knock this down a couple pegs. And I'll be honest, I'm way less confident in my AFC landscape than I was my NFC. I feel much more uneasy about how this shook out, but it is what it is. And I went back through it a couple times to check myself on a couple things. And yeah, at the end of the day, this just seemed to be how the chips fell. And so I had to let it stand at that point. So let's start with the AFC East.
Let's do it.
Get into that. I'll let you do the honors and get started on this bad boy.
So like we did last time, we'll go bottom to top, and I'll try to give some sort of explanation.
I wonder who's number 4 in
each one. Yeah, the New England Patriots definitely 4. I had them at 3-14. I think that's probably a little low. I think they'll find a way probably to maybe win 4 or 5 games. I can't see them winning more than 6 games unless Drake May comes in late in the season and really shocks us. The word out of the very final week of camp, too, was Gerard Mayo saying is that actually Drake May was outperforming Jacoby Brissett, but they have a plan in place. And listen, I heard a really interesting take from Colin Cowherd the other day, and he gets made fun of a lot, but I do want to give credit where it's due. And his podcast on the Volume Sports Network, they were talking about the age of quarterbacks. Drake May is extremely young, like extremely young. He's like 20, 21 years old versus a guy like Bo Nix is coming in. He's 24 years old.
Yeah.
And that is a huge difference. We've all been through our early 20s. 21 versus 24. 4 years when you're that young is a huge age difference. And also just game experience, life experience. I think Drake May, the best thing for him is to sit as long as humanly possible. I hope the Patriots stay strong. I don't care if they're 0-7. Stay strong. Don't throw Drake May into an 0-7 game. Like, ride this out, because I think Drake May's got a really, really big, huge upside if his confidence isn't shaken, if the young kid can really grow and develop. So I have the Patriots at 3-14 on the low end. I think a lot of that ended up, as I look back at their schedule, being like, oh, I kind of want this team to have an extra win. So they put the Patriots, oh yeah, just make sure they beat the Patriots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ended up that way for me. But they're the only team in the AFC that I truly think could be a disaster. Like, they really could be a 3-win team picking number 1 overall. I don't really see any other team in the AFC, barring major injury, as like oh man, they are bottom of the barrel 3-win team picking first. It's a really competitive conference beyond the Patriots. I have the Dolphins at number 3, and I have them at 8-9. And Dan, I don't even want to talk about the first couple games of the Dolphins. All I want to talk about is Thanksgiving on. It is a tough schedule for the Dolphins Thanksgiving on, and we know that's when the weather gets cold. We know that's when Tua is at his worst. And Tua's got the big contract. He's got at Green Bay, and that is Thanksgiving night. That's a loss. You then host the Jets in Miami. Weather won't be a factor. I like the Jets defensive line against a very shaky Dolphins offensive line. I feel like that's a loss. Then it's all right, hey, let's recoup. We're indoors, we're on the road, but you're at Houston, the Texans, a very good Houston Texans team with a better quarterback than Tua, and I think that's a loss. I think there's a 3-game losing streak, and then don't worry, they go back home in December, but they play the Niners. So that's a really incredibly tough 4-game stretch. And then you say to yourself, okay, it's got to get easier to end the season, right? Nope. At the Browns on Sunday night. So you're talking about December 29th evening in Cleveland. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. It's going to be snowy.
Yep.
It's going to be awful. And then they end the season in New York at the Jets. And if they're both around 9 wins, 8-9 wins, that's going to be maybe the flex into the evening primetime game. A 6-game stretch at the end of the year for the Dolphins that could be absolutely brutal. And so saying that, I think it's crucial for the Dolphins to get off to a hot start in September, and it's possible for them. They have the Jags, the Bills, the Seahawks, the Titans, the Patriots in their first 5 games. Could they find a way to get 3 out of the 5? I think they could. I think they need to find a way to get 4 or 5 out of 5 if they want to have a chance to win the playoffs, because the final 5-6 games for them is just brutal. And I don't trust Tua in the cold. I refuse to trust it till I see it. So that's why I have the Dolphins at 8-9. Dolphins fans, come at me, but that's why I have you at 8-9. I have the Jets at number 2, and I have them just beating out the Dolphins, but I have them finding a way to 10-7. The Jets' schedule is frustrating, right? Because it's one of those schedules where it's like big game, lull, big game, lull. And so when you're going through it, you say to yourself, all right, well, do they lose the big game, but then they win the games they're supposed to, or do they win the big game and then it's like a trap game because they're looking ahead to the next game? You know what I mean? You fall into a lot of those with the Jets. Also, the hardest thing for us, obviously, to do is, what is Aaron Rodgers going to be? The last time Aaron Rodgers was playing at an MVP level, we're talking 3 years ago, because it wasn't last year he was injured. The year before, they lost to the Lions and they missed the playoffs. And the year before that, he was an MVP, but then lost to the Niners at home in the playoffs. So it's been 3 calendar years and a major injury since then. I also think there are times in the Jets schedule, they have a couple breaks where Aaron won't need to be carried. When you're playing the Patriots, it should be a Breece Hall show. This Jets offensive line is drastically improved. Very good defensive front. So I think they're going to play into Robert Saleh's type of football. Run the ball, control the game. Also, remember, Aaron and Nathaniel Hackett, the last time they were together when Green Bay missed the playoffs with that loss to Detroit, and then the year before where he did win an MVP with Nathaniel Hackett, he and Nathaniel Hackett had a really slow pace offense. Aaron is not one of the reasons Aaron struggled with Matt LaFleur at the end is Matt LaFleur is like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. He wants motion. He wants guys. He wants to see what the defense is doing. Aaron's the opposite. Aaron's a little bit more like methodical. I just want to get you set up. I want to have my guy beat you one-on-one because I can fit the ball into a window that no other quarterback can fit into. So I think you're going to see a slow, methodical Jets offense. It's really based off the run. I think that serves them well in the games that they're favored in. But I think they're obviously playing in a couple huge primetime games against some tough teams. I don't think the Jets are going to be a 12-win team. I think 10 is their ceiling. I have them hitting their ceiling mainly because I just feel like an Aaron Rodgers run is everything that we in the NFL media world, we need, we want, and we need, and I think it can happen. A lot based too off just the talent on the roster, and Robert Saleh has to get it done. His head coaching career is on the line. I do have the Bills winning the division like I did last year. Unlike you, I continue to believe in the Buffalo Bills. I have the Bills at 12-5 winning the division. So let me talk you through the Buffalo Bills here really quickly. I obviously believe in Josh Allen. I think Stephon Diggs is addition by subtraction. And what I mean by that is look at what Patrick Mahomes did the year after he lost Tyreek Hill. They won the Super Bowl, and then they won the Super Bowl again. I'm not saying the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. Don't put those words into my mouth. But what I am saying is Josh Allen benefited from Tyreek Hill when Josh Allen was from Stephon Diggs when he was a young player, right? Those first 2 years, it helped him right the ship. And the last 2 years, it felt very much like Diggs was just a problem. It was get me the ball, get me the ball, get me the ball. And let's be honest, Diggs is getting older, and he's not separating the way he used to. He's still a great route runner. He's still going to be, I think, great for C.J. Stroud in that offense. But I actually think this Buffalo Bills offense now is going to just be more. Josh Allen gets to spread the ball. Dalton Kincaid, Shakir. They have a wide receiver core that's a really solid wide receiver core that's not going to be in Josh Allen's ear when he gets back to the huddle. And I think that's going to be huge for Josh Allen. I think you're going to see Dalton Kincaid have almost 1,000 yards receiving this year. I think they're going to feed it that way. I think you're going to see Josh Allen running the football a ton. I think Josh Allen's going to win the MVP because I think it's a great story. He lost his main weapon, but his stats are incredible. He finds a way to still win a really tough division. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for the Bills to get off to, while maybe a slow start, 3 of their first 4 games at Miami and then the Jags and the Ravens. But it does open up. The 3 games after that, Texans, Jets, Titans, and then a trip to Seattle, which is a winnable game. Then they get the Dolphins at home in November, so they should get a weather factor there, and then Colts. So they have a 5-game stretch there where I can see them going 4-1 to really right the ship. And then to the end of the year, the Patriots are 2 of their last 3. So if it comes down to it, Patriots, Jets, Patriots, I like the Bills more than the Jets. I like Josh Allen way more than I'd like anyone in New York. And so I think they could have a 3-game win streak maybe at 9-5 to end up 12-5 to sneak and win this division. I think it'll be close like last year. I think the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Jets will be battling through November. But I think you'll see a stretch where the Bills separate, get the lead, maybe a 4-1 stretch, a 5-0 win streak. And then you'll see Josh Allen late in bad football weather carry this team to a 12-5 record and get them the division. That's how I see it unfolding.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't have too many gripes with that
the
lineup.
Bills. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well,
this is like my main thing I've been waiting to hear is what your thoughts on the Bills were.
Yeah. Well, I just, I got to reverse course a little bit on Buffalo after seeing what they were able to do last year. Definitely, I'm still not. They're close to me to becoming the Dallas Cowboys. And I like the Bills more. Josh Allen is obviously much better than Dak Prescott, but overall, they are starting to make me think, are they just a very good regular season team always, but can't quite get themselves over the hump in the postseason? And
I'm not picking the Bills to win the Super Bowl, by the way, and that's not what I'm saying. I get what you're saying. I value that 100%.
Yeah. So I have the Patriots in the basement too. I have them at 5-12. I think their schedule is pretty tough, and so that was part of it. I do think Drake May is going to see playing time at some point early in the season. I think before Halloween. So I do think
Right.
that he'll get to play in October, if not even sooner. I mean, we'll see what happens with Jacoby Brissett's injury because he may have to play right out of the gate here. So I think he's talented, and I think they have Jalen Polk, and they got some young up and coming players. There's optimism in New England for the first time in several years, and so I think there's a chance for them to begin to right the ship. But at the same time, it's probably beneficial for them to just go 5-12 this year. They're not going to compete for the division, so at that point, paired with a fairly difficult schedule. I mean, even their non-conference games, they got to play the Bears, they got to play the Rams. I mean, shoot, that's not a great listing there. Then they have to play the AFC South, which a couple years ago wasn't a tough get, but now having to play the Jags, the Colts, the Texans, especially, is pretty tough. And the Titans, maybe
Titans have
we'll
more
see
talent
something good.
They have more talent
Yeah.
than the Patriots.
Exactly. So it's going to be a tough go for them this year, but 5-12. I feel that I kind of disagree with you. I actually think their floor is like around 5 games. I think with Gerard Mayo having been there and a part of that culture, I don't think too much is going to change in New England from that aspect. And I do he brought younger assistants in. So, I think that they're going to play decent defense. I will say one quick thing about Gerard Mayo, though, that I'm not crazy about, but the caveat here is I wasn't crazy about Dan Campbell's opening press conference, and that turned out all right. But the way he's handled this whole Drake May, Jacoby Brissett thing is strange with the media. It's almost like he's caught off guard when he's being asked. And so he has this
yeah, I get you.
He's kind of like twisting himself into a pretzel. And I'm like, dude, how did you not have a plan of how you were going to communicate what's happening? And it's very easy. I mean, he was in New England for all these years. All you got to do is just say, we're letting this thing play out. Jacoby's Jacoby's in the front running position, and we've got a young guy in Drake, and he's been playing well, but we haven't made any decisions yet. And when that time comes, we'll let you all know. But for right now,
you're just so used to Mike Tomlin that you're spoiled. You're spoiled by great coach speak. Yeah.
Well, but Gerard Mayo should be used to Bill Belichick.
Yeah, he should.
I agree with you. Not committing to anything. So I just wanted to note that real quick. But third place in the division, and this actually wasn't the case when I first did it, but I went back and thought about it a little bit more, is the Miami Dolphins. I have them at 9-8. I have them at 9-8 here. This was a conflicting one for me because I actually do think the Miami Dolphins are going to be a pretty decent team, and 9-8 is obviously not, trash. But again, you pointed out their schedule is pretty tough. And I think coming out of the gates, to be honest, I know that they get, 3 home games in the first month, which benefits Miami. But then again, it doesn't benefit Miami all that much to have a home game in September because everyone's got nice weather in September. I would like, if I'm Miami, to be on the road for the first 6 weeks of the season so I can have all my 8 games at home. Yeah. In November and December. They do have home games still late into the year too, but those road matchups against the Jets, as you mentioned, the Browns, the Texans, even though that's obviously in warmer climate, but to go on the road multiple times through the end of the year, Lambeau, that's too much to overcome. And so we've talked about this before. If you don't have too many pockets of a season where I can envision a 3-game winning streak, it's hard to get you to the playoffs. And so I have them missing the playoffs here at 9-8 in third in the division for those reasons. Plus, did they get much better? I don't know. I mean, their defense, I think, got a little bit better. But
I want to defend you and I both really quick. While you were talking, I was able to finally look it up. I had mentioned it earlier. PFF has the Miami Dolphins offensive line 25th out of the 32 teams. Armstead at left tackle and Isaiah Wynn at left guard. Good players. It's a good left side line. But center, right guard, and right tackle, Brewer, Jones, and Jackson, a lot of unknown. And with a very
they don't have Richie Incognito there still?
Just beating the crap out of Tua. With a very immobile Tua and a very big late schedule. I mean, Dan, we both said it. if Dolphins fans are mad that we have them both missing the playoffs, show me why I should feel pumped about the Dolphins this year. Their offensive line is worse. They lost an elite edge rusher in Christian Wilkinson, and all you did was spend money on your two wide receivers. Your one wide receiver you already have. You're already spending money on the other wide receiver, and you spent money on Tua. It's like, and all we saw at the end of the year, remember, the Dolphins had the division won. The only reason they were in Arrowhead in that horribly cold playoff game was because they fumbled the division late in the year in cold weather games. So it's like, we spent a lot of time last week with the Eagles. Like, the Eagles fumbled their way down the stretch. The Dolphins fumbled their way down the stretch in the AFC. They absolutely did. Remember, they had we have episodes, we were talking about the Dolphins could be the number one seed. They were in like the catbird seed for the number one seed for a while, and they end up in Kansas City in minus 20-degree weather because I just don't trust him. I like Mike McDaniel a lot. I just don't think this roster, and you nailed it. I'm so glad you're on the same page with me here. I don't see this roster as a elite roster in the NFL. It's great weapons.
And it's extremely top heavy. Top heavy. I mean, one Tyreek Hill injury away, one Devon Achane injury. Yeah. And where are they going? Where's this team going? They need everything to perform at peak to be able to get to that like 12-win, 13-win season. And that's a lot to ask. I mean, we're talking about them coming off a year in which their number one receiver almost had 2,000 yards receiving.
How much more?
That still wasn't good enough to win the division.
And let's be honest, I think we both agree with the late schedules. I laid it out. This Dolphins team needs to find a way to start 7-2 or 8-1. And it's a tough start of the schedule.
And I don't see that happening. Exactly.
It's just
I actually have them starting 0-2 to begin the year too. Like, I have them losing to Jacksonville and I have them losing to Buffalo right out of the gate.
did too. I absolutely did too.
Then I have them going on like a 5-game winning streak, but then they lose, again because they got tough matches.
Dolphins fans are going to be all butthurt and they're going to be in our mentions, but show me the proof. Show me the money, as Jerry Maguire would say. I want to see the proof. Show me why I should believe in the Dolphins.
I do have the New York Jets in second place, and they did make the playoffs. I have them at 11-6, though.
Okay, a win more than me.
And I actually do feel a little bit more comfortable about the Jets. If this is obviously all depending on the Aaron Rodgers situation, but if they do have Aaron Rodgers for the vast majority or the entire season, it's just a really good roster. I mean, I know there's questions about the offensive line, and I get that. But they also got a quarterback who's super accurate and can get the ball out quick and make decisions fast. So they have a good quarterback for having a bad offensive line. It's either that or like a Lamar Jackson type that can just run out of trouble. And so I feel good about that. You got a true number one wide receiver. You got some young receivers as well. You got a good tight end. You've got a great running game that you can, work behind, and then a phenomenal defense. So that alone is a good recipe, especially in this division. Their defense is going to keep them in enough games here to where they're going to be in contention for the division late. And I do have the Bills edging them out in the division, but with the same record. So a tiebreaker here, 11-6 for Buffalo too. Look, I still do hold the sentiments that I had last season in terms of I do question whether we've seen the best that Buffalo has to offer. The pendulum for me swung a little bit too far last year, into which case I was like, I think we're going to just see the start of the complete downfall. Yeah. And maybe that's not the case. And maybe that won't ever happen, but I also still don't see the ascension. And I don't know if this team got that much better. I mean, even though they did get rid of, target hogs, they're still like, you're going to rely on Keon Coleman to come through for you this year. Like, Khalil Shakir is going to have to probably be your number one wide receiver for a good portion of the season. How much does Dalton Kincaid become a part of this offense now? Can they lean on James Cook even more? Because I think they're going to have to. I don't think Josh Allen can continue to play hero ball to get this team over the hump. And their defense is just, in my view, slightly above average. And so there's a hill to climb.
What record did you have?
And I'm making all of these negative cases about a team I have first in their division here. Yeah. But it's just pumping the brakes on the expectations. But I will concede, last year I was extremely wrong about Buffalo. I had them missing the playoffs. Obviously, that was way off. I'm not going to have them missing the playoffs again because Josh Allen is just that good, and Sean McDermott's a good head coach. but I'm not going to have this team winning 13 games until I see it. I'm not going to have them going to the Super Bowl until I can see them get past, adversity in the playoffs. So
I think you agree with me though. The writing on the wall is there for Josh Allen to win his MVP this year, right? Like it's like who's he got with who if he wins this division and he throws, because he had 35 plus touchdowns last year, plus like 10 or 15 rushing. I mean, like the numbers are there for Josh Allen to be like, he's doing it when he's got no help, like type of thing.
Yeah.
Can I also say
it is set up for him for sure?
I want to propose this to you. And I think I'm going to do I might do a deeper dive into this coming on up, but I find Aaron Rodgers, this is a really fascinating season for him. We think of Brett Favre's career ending kind of on a high note. We forget that his career really ended with a sack on the frozen field of the Minnesota Golden Gophers when the Viking Stadium had a hole ripped in it before they got that beautiful brand new bank stadium that they're in. It's like glass that kills all the birds. And that Viking season ended late in the season, and he was injured and then retired. Now, the year before that, it was the NFC Championship game in the pick, and they were 12-4, and they were incredible. And that's really what we think of Brett Favre's career ending, right? Like, you think of this, like, dude, Brett was great till the end, and he almost got him in the Super Bowl. And Aaron's career right now is, the Packers ended weird, and it was ugly, and then he injured himself. And Aaron, one thing we know about Aaron Rodgers, he likes to say a lot. I don't know if we know a lot about Aaron. I think we know that Aaron is conscious of where he is in the pecking order.
Ranks. Yeah.
And Aaron absolutely knows the one Super Bowl is a problem. And I think Aaron absolutely, kind of like LeBron James, they're very similar in this way. LeBron is always thinking legacy, right? This Olympics team was big for LeBron's legacy because he gets the moments of him and Steph. But he was the MVP of the whole tournament. Like him and KD, but he was the MVP of the whole tournament. And LeBron was great. He was the best player, I think, at Team USA at the Olympics. But Aaron, they're very aware of where they file. And Aaron, I think, knows that a Super Bowl is probably unlikely. What can help Aaron's legacy? Getting the Jets to end the playoff drought, but also he's about, if he throws for, I think it's like 4,400 yards, he becomes 6 all time. He jumps from 9 to 6, passing Phillip Rivers.
Yeah,
and then he's only like 1,000 yards behind Big Ben for 5th all time. And so Aaron, I think in his mind is thinking 2 really productive years. If I can have 2 really productive years with the Jets and make the playoffs both years, even if I don't win a Super Bowl, it can be like the Brett Favre ending, right? Where it's like, dude, 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers was throwing for 4,500 yards. And if Aaron can have 8,000 yards, and I think it's like 60 touchdowns over the next 2 years, he ends up 5th all-time passing and then like 4th all-time touchdowns. So I think that really matters to Aaron. So while I said earlier the Jets are going to have a slow, methodical offense feeding Breece Hall, I expect Aaron Rodgers to find a way to go for 4,000 yards, close to 25 to 32 touchdowns like that, knowing that if he does that, he sets himself up for one more year of basically that production, and it solidifies him statistically as top 5 in both categories. When you add in all of he doesn't throw interceptions, it makes his numbers career-wise look really, really well. I think this is a 2-year exit plan for Aaron Rodgers. I think he was hoping it started last year. And I think that's why he has rehabbed and worked so hard to get back, because he knows he still has now 2 years of work to do because he missed last year. And he knew, I think, when leaving Green Bay, he has 2 years of work he needs to put in to be where Aaron wants to be, to at least feel comfortable in that world. Hey, John Cozen!
Shout out to Cozen with some colorful commentary. We couldn't leave the AFC East without giving the shout out. I also like this one too. I
love our guy. Listen, Cozen, this is where we're at. This is the new studio. I think you were with me on that, right? Like that makes sense.
No, yeah.
I'm not crazy for thinking that.
No, I totally agree with you. I just think Aaron will probably just shoot to throw for 8,000 yards this season and cut that in half and just get it all out of the way this
Well, he
year.
needs Devontae Adams. They need to make that Devontae Adams trade quickly then in the season.
All right, we got to move on. We're 35 minutes into this thing and only through one division. We got to
It's a
speed this
spicy
bad boy
division.
up. All right, AFC South. I'll start us off on this one.
Go for
We'll
it.
go round robin. If that even makes, I don't even know if that makes sense.
Who cares?
The Tennessee Titans come in fourth place in this division. And I actually think the Tennessee Titans are going to be a decent team, but yet again, I only have them winning 5 games. So that's pretty rough. But they were one where I was like, dude, this is a tough road for Tennessee. And I think Will Levis is going to have like a year that he instills confidence in the coaching staff that, this is the guy we can ride with for a little while here. I do believe that. I just think roster-wise, it's a little bit tough. We don't know much about the head coaching situation, Brian Callahan. I don't know, if he's good or not. We just don't know much about him.
Yeah.
I think they're going to change offensively a lot. I think they're going to throw the ball a ton. And I think defensively, they're going to struggle this year. And for that reason, they're not really going to be well equipped to get into shootouts with people. And unfortunately for them, they play, some teams that I think are really good, even outside of their own division. They play the NFC North, which we both think is a pretty solid division. And then they have to play Buffalo and they have to play, the Chargers. And it's just, that's a rough road for an already struggling team. They have to play the Bengals later in the year. So it's just, man, a tall order for Tennessee. So I have them at 5-12, but I do think this will be the year they get a high draft pick. They're able to get, another top tier guard or tackle next year and really start this ascension quickly. I have the Colts coming in third place, and a lot of this hinders on Anthony Richardson. I don't know how much confidence we can put into Anthony Richardson takes because we've seen 2 games of him play.
I know.
And I just, I don't know how accurate he is. I don't know how much he can rely on his legs. And again, they have a tough schedule too. So all of that combined leads me to 7-10, which is a slight improvement from last year. But it's still a situation of, I believe in Shane Steichen, but I don't know what this Anthony Richardson experience is going to yield. And so that gives me pause. And I said it was an improvement. It's actually a decrease from last season. They won 9 games. That's my bad. But I truly do feel like this team didn't get better as a unit. And I just don't know what Anthony Richardson brings to this team, because a lot could be said for what Gardner Minshew did, rallying the troops and playing within the system and not doing too much. Anthony Richardson could be the guy that is too turnover prone that puts them in a bad situation early on, and they don't have the defense to cover for it. So I know that can be a little bit harsh, and I'll be willing to eat crow on that. But I don't see them winning more than 9 games anyway, and so that's where they fall here at me with me at 7-10. I have Jacksonville coming in at 10-7, second in the division here, but they do make the playoffs. They come in as the 6th seed, and Jacksonville I do think is going to be an improved team, but the record is not going to be indicative of that because they do have peaks and valleys throughout the year. In terms of where they have to go, of course,
2 weeks in London.
They're the team that has to travel to London every year, and they got to do all of these crazy trips. And late in the season, they do get some breaks in terms of they got a couple home games, and then all of their road games are either in Dome or West Coast, so they're not going to be in the harsh environments at all really next season. Philly in week 9 is the by far like the worst environment that they're going to have to encounter in terms of later in the year. So I think they're a pretty steady and consistent group throughout. And, this is the year for Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson to prove that they've got the makings of a strong franchise that can do this for years to come. And so I think they'll get there and make their case. The Texans, though, after what I saw last year, after what I saw from DeMeco Ryans, a team that only got better with the addition of Stephon Diggs. In my view, they have an embarrassment of riches over there in terms of the offensive side of the football. They get Joe Mixon to help out with the run game as well. And this defense is young and growing. They were already pretty solid last year. I expect that trajectory to continue. But they're at 10-7 too. So it's a tight race I have for the AFC South here. But they have the tiebreaker over the Jags in this situation and take the division at 10-7. Both of them 4-2 in division play as well. So this, I think, is going to be a fascinating fight throughout the year. I'm excited to see how CJ Stroud answers the call of being, the offensive rookie of the year and having the defensive rookie of the year on the other side and Will Anderson. Now you got to come back and prove it again. I will say I have them starting the year really strong. I have them starting 4-0. And then
Sunday night, week 2. It could be an L.
I know. I got them beating your Bears, my man. That's all right. I have the Bears winning week 1 though. So
there you go. Well, thank me too.
So they're 1-1. They're 500 to start Caleb Williams' career. But
I'll take it.
Yeah. So I think that gives them a strong foundation to springboard themselves into the year. And then the schedule, they have some favorable, setups outside of that Chiefs Ravens back to back late in December.
Tough.
That's going to be tough. That's why I do think that they bank wins early, because I have them losing both of those games to the Chiefs and the Ravens before winning at home to end the year. But overall, I feel pretty good about both the Texans and the Jags. And so I felt good that, my schedule predictions ended up with both of them making the playoffs. But I do think the Texans will win the division. And I would love to see the Jags do it because I am a fan of Trevor Lawrence and the team. But Texans are just a really solid unit, and they've done it already. So Jacksonville's got stuff to prove.
You and I there needs to be a study done on our brains when we die. I have the Titans at 6-11. So 1 win off. Right. I'm with you. The Vegas has the over under at 6.5, by the way. So if you really, you should hammer the under if you're that confident. I think they're going to be right around that. I think this is a Titans team that actually, as you talked about the shootouts, I think that's what they're going to be in a lot. I think they're going to be okay in it. The problem is they're going to lose games like 40-33. It's
going to be close, right?
Because they have the weapons on the outside. Hopkins, they get Ridley in. I think Will Levis is Jay Cutler 2.0. I think he's athletic. I think he's got a cannon. I think he's loose with the football. And I really do think that their new head coach, the former offensive coordinator for the Bengals, is going to let it loose. He knows what to do with 2 wide receivers. He knows what to do with a big arm, strong quarterback who's not afraid to let it rip. So I think they're going to be fun to watch. I think the problem is that defense is not good. And their offensive line, while they've taken 2 great offensive linemen back-to-back drafts, they're still another guy or 2 away.
Take another 2
elite
man.
unit. Yeah. And so I think the Titans are going to be fun. I think they're going to upset people. I think this Titans team is going to look a little bit like that Titans team from like that first year with Ryan Tannehill, who we were like, dude, what are they doing? Like, this team should not be that good. And they steal a win or 2 in a big game. But then they lose a lot of games. Like, I think they go probably 1-3 against NFC North. That kills them and things like that. Colts,
the teams that they're potentially going to be getting in shootouts with, to your point, the Jets, the Packers, the Bills, the Lions, the Bengals.
I trust them more.
Texans, what do the majority of those teams have? Decent to really good defenses.
Yeah,
the Titans don't have that to go.
And I trust their quarterback more. Like Will Levis. Yep. Will Levis has, though, a huge ceiling. Like, if Will Levis has the opportunity to, at the end of this year, be like, oh my God, we have to talk about Will Levis now. Like, he's got that talent in him. I really believe that. Colts, I have just like you. It's 7-10. You harped on it. I'm not going to spend too much more time on it. I think we should have seen it coming more with the Colts last year when Richardson went down. Gardner Minshew was with Shane Steichen the whole year before as the backup in Philadelphia.
True.
No one knew that offense and was ready to go more. And no one fits a scheme better than a guy like Gardner Minshew. He's just like, I'm going to run whatever coach tells me to run, and I'm going to do it perfectly. That's what Gardner Minshew, that's what he does. That's what Kirk Cousins does. That's what Dak Prescott does. He is of that ilk. The problem is you have Anthony Richardson, who's of the Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Michael Vick ilk of like, hey, coach, I know you said to throw it to the X receiver when he cuts here after taking 3 steps, But
Yeah.
I'm 6'6" and run like a 4.3, and so I'm just gonna maybe hold on to the football and maybe throw a cannonball. With Anthony Richardson, it could be boom or bust. If the Colts end up as a 5-win team, would it shock you? No, because I really have no faith in what to believe with Anthony Richardson. If they end up a 9-10 win team and sneak into the playoffs, would it shock me? Absolutely not, because I think he has got that type of potential. He is a star in the making if he could put all the pieces around him with a great young offensive coach. So where did I put him? Right in the middle, 7-10. And it could be 9 wins, it could be 5 wins. I'll go 7-10. I have two teams.
But does this, in your mind, this doesn't reflect on Steichen at all? Correct? Like,
No,
you're
I think
you're still feeling confident about Steichen after that, and you're not really putting
everything
it
we
on
needed to know about Shane Steichen last year. He can coach
Mhm.
offense. What we're learning now is a little bit like, hey, we know that Kyle Shanahan can coach offense. And Trey Lance was the 3rd overall pick, and now he's a backup throwing 5 picks in the 4th preseason game.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying Anthony Richardson is Trey Lance. But what I am saying is we don't know anything really truly about Anthony Richardson as far as a long-term. We saw pops. We saw incredible pops.
Yeah.
We saw pops from
We
Trey
saw
Lance.
those from Will Levis, you know.
Yeah, we saw those from
Yeah.
Will Levis. So I'm gonna hedge my bet. I would not touch the over/under win total on the Colts at all in Vegas. I have two teams like you tied with the same record like you at the top of the division. I have them both a 1 win more though. I have them both at 11-6, the Texans
Okay.
and the Jags.
Okay.
But I have the Texans, the 2nd seed, and the Jags as
all
the
right.
1 seed. And so I think it comes down to the fact that again,
Not 1 seed, but
not
the
the number 1 overall seed,
okay,
but the
okay.
one in their division. I
Gotcha,
think
gotcha.
for me, like you nailed it on both the analysis of both these teams. I think for me, what it came down to when I was picking the games is that obviously I had their records tied at the end, and I looked at the win percentage in the tiebreaker, and it was like, oh, the Jags are better. Do I think the Jags are better than the Texans? Do I think the Texans are better than the Jags? I think it's a total coin flip. What I'm going to trust in this and say, hey, I'm going to trust just, hey, that's what my gut said, that based on how the season broke out, the Jags are going to win, is I think that Doug Peterson, of the coaches on whose seat is hot, he is a guy I trust the most. Like, he's a guy I trust can be like, hey, we know what went wrong in year 2 of this thing. We can right it in year 3. I also think that they are a team that sneakily improved. You have Josh Allen on the defensive side of the football. That defense is solid. It's not great, but it's really solid. And offensively, I think Trevor Lawrence is ready for the pop here. He got the contract. Everything's settled. He knows no matter what, he's going to be the quarterback for the Jags next year. That, I think, is a weight off of his shoulders. I think it's the first time since he's been the number 1 overall pick, there's a little less weight on his shoulders. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's more pressure on Doug, less pressure on him. He's got the deal. And so I think it's going to lead to a pop year from him. I expect Trevor Lawrence, 33 touchdowns, 6 or 7 rushing touchdowns. I expect him to have less than 15 interceptions. I think they're throwing the ball over the yard. And I think that he has a type of year where you're like, oh, yep, there he is.
Brian Thomas is looking like a great first-round pick for them too. So
yes,
if he can be a legit number 1 wideout with Christian Kirk and Evan Engram there and Travis Etienne, they are cooking.
Exactly. And I think, remember, Lawrence is a weapon himself. He can pick up a plenty of first downs and make runs. So I also think, in my gut, I truly believe the Texans had such a special year. They can't recreate it. And I think you agree with that too, because you had them a less win total. You had them down to 10 wins.
10, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's something in that, right? There's a sophomore slump.
It's a full season of film on CJ Stroud and the magic
and
of the
Ryans.
team. Yeah.
And I do think Stephon Diggs will help, but I also think there's going to be times where it hurts. I think it hurts. I think it's going to hurt. And so we'll see how that ends up playing out for the Texans. Jags end up with the win in the South, but the Texans and Jags both make the playoffs.
Good deal. All right. How about you springboard us into the AFC West?
The West. The Broncos 6-11. I had them more as like a 4-win team. But I will say, the fact that they're starting Bo Nix and they're just going for it with Bo Nix, I actually think is the best thing for them, even though I'm not a believer in Bo Nix. In the sense that when you have less quarterback drama, they're now not going to bench Bo Nix, right? Like he's going to be the guy, unless it is horrifically bad. And I mean like 0-5, 5 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, like horrifically bad. He's not getting benched, right? This is his pick.
Mhm.
This is his franchise. So stability is so crucial for a football team. So that clicked in my head. And I was like, all right, let's get the Broncos to about 6 wins. I think they're capped at 6 wins mainly because it's a tough schedule and they don't have the talent as the teams they're playing. Like, let's just be honest, they don't have the overall roster talent. So I have them at the bottom at 6-11. I have the Raiders at 6-11 at number 3. This is basically because when it all came down, they were the same. And I was like, well, I've been shitting on the Broncos way too much. I can't have the Broncos ahead of the Raiders. I'll put the Raiders ahead of the Broncos. I like that they're starting Gardner Minshew. The thing that worries me is their schedule early is tricky. And if this is a team that starts really slow, this is a team that all of a sudden picks up the phone and says, we'll give you a second rounder for Devontae Adams. And then all of a sudden they're the first team that really like lets things go, right? That's not Max Crosby.
Sure.
But remember, Christian Wilkins, we talked about him leaving Miami. Where did he end up?
Yeah, that was a big get. Big get. Yeah.
Max Crosby is the best pass rusher maybe in football. And he just got a Christian Wilkins, who's a top 5-6 pass rusher in football, to help him. And that is huge. I think this Raiders defense is going to keep them in games. I think they're going to be disruptive. I think they're going to create turnovers. Antonio Pierce is going to have himself a unit on his hands. And I think if Gardner can keep it alive and keep the ball and keep Devontae Adams happy, this Raiders team is spunky and they're going to win a game they shouldn't win. And I just like them more than the Broncos. And I've been shitting on the Broncos, so I put them ahead of the Broncos. Chargers at 9-8. I wanted the Chargers to be a 10-11 win team. They were one of the teams I had going to spec. I want the Chargers. I love it. I love Harbaugh. We're believers in Herbert. You start looking at that wide receiver room, it's really scary. You look at that tight end room, it's even uglier. You look at the running back room and you're like, wait, that's the running back room? Like, remember, Austin Eckler is not on this team anymore. The weapons are scarce, and I mean scarce. And Justin Herbert has not practiced with these scarce weapons because of the foot. And Justin Herbert, a lot like I was just saying with Trevor Lawrence, he's a threat running the football. And if he's not running the football and he's not comfortable with that plantar fascia injury, that really worries me. It really worries me. Now they have things going for them. I think it's an easy start to the year for the Chargers. I think they can find a way to a positive start. I love their offensive line. I love the style of football that Harbaugh is going to want to play. I think their defense has incredible edge rushers. And I think they claw their way to 9-8. I think the ceiling is 10-7 in that division. And so I have the Chargers coming in a second. Chiefs.
Did they get a playoff spot there? No, right?
I do not have the Chargers in the playoffs. No.
Okay.
And then I have the Chiefs at the number 1 overall seed, 12-5. Gets them the number 1 overall seed this year. And, I'm done. I mean, I'm not picking against them. I truly think this is the team that can go 3 Super Bowls in a row. We've never seen it before. That's the talk right now. And I truly believe that
they can do it.
If in 7-8 months from now, we're talking about history, it makes sense because Mahomes, I think Kelsey, the thing I will say about Kelsey is that I don't think he's going to have as big of a year. I think they're going to try to rest Kelsey. You saw how crucial he was. Remember, he was banged up a lot last year.
Yeah.
And they made sure at the end of the year, as long as Kelsey's healthy for the playoffs, and he was magnificent and he was electric. So I think it's a Chiefs team that could hit some up and downs, but I think late in the year, they always find their stride. And then they're going to find a way to win that division, get to 12 wins, get the number 1 overall seed, and I think march their way towards NFL immortality.
Well, damn it, Mark. We're 3 for 3 and in our AFC picks. I actually thought we were going to have a lot more variety.
I wanted the Chargers. I wanted the Chargers so bad.
Me too. I wanted to have them make the playoffs as well, but
I just can't. I can't do it.
My prediction either. So yeah, I have the Broncos at 5-12 for many of the reasons that you said. So I have them one game fewer. I just I know nothing about Bo Nix. I don't have the confidence that Sean Payton is the magician that his legacy has somehow built him up to be. I think he's really good. I just think people build him up to be this like complete pioneer in the NFL, and I don't know. It's yet to be seen for me in terms of anything outside of a few season windows with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So does Bo Nix have it? Maybe. I don't think their roster is remotely good enough for them to compete this year. So they are there at 5-12, and they go through some growing pains throughout this season. But hopefully by the end of it, they will know whether or not Bo Nix is the guy for them moving forward. I have the Raiders coming in at 6-11 in third place for many of the reasons you stated as well. I worry about the consistency of this team because I do struggle to find out exactly how they're going to be able to run the football effectively. I don't think they have the makings for that right now. Um, Josh Jacobs is no longer in town. Zamir White is their starting running back, and he's been a backup in his career to this point. Yeah, like who is that exactly? So we'll see if that works out. Their offensive line,
He's going to be my starting running back
improved.
in fantasy, by the way. No,
Yeah.
because I just trash talk Zamir White. You're gonna be like, I'm
Exactly.
desperate for a starter, and I'm gonna end up with Zamir White.
Unless Brock Bowers has a Sam Laporta type season, which was a complete outlier from the tight end position, tight ends usually take a year or two to fully transition to the NFL. And so the weapons they have is Gardner Minshew throwing to Devontae Adams, and then there's a lot of question marks right now.
Well, McDonald, the tight end, and then
Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers.
Michael Mayer, not McDonald, Mayer,
and Mayer's solid too. I don't want to begrudge that, but we didn't see him involved in the passing game to the extent that maybe you thought coming out of Notre Dame that he would be. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll see if Antonio Pierce, what he does with this team to take them, through to that next step. But there are a lot of question marks with this team. And while their defensive line certainly got improvement, overall, their defense doesn't scare me. And they're in one of the toughest divisions, and not divisions as a whole, but definitely the Chargers and the Chiefs are some hard opponents to have to constantly battle throughout the season. Schedule doesn't do them any favors either. 9-8 for the Chargers. I do think they're going to be a scrappy team, but I think they're a year away from fully being, implemented under the Jim Harbaugh regime. They're going to have to, get their complete shift offensively up to speed, and I think that's going to take some time. I do have them coming out strong, but that's only because they play the Raiders and the Panthers the first 2 weeks of the season. And then they get to play, Pittsburgh, who we don't know what they're going to be. So the Chargers could easily be 3-0 to begin the year. But they do have to play, the AFC North, the rest of the AFC North throughout the year. They've got matchups, of course, with the Chiefs late in the season. So it's just it's kind of an up and down year, I think, for the Chargers. They are going to have to scrape and claw for things. But I think overall, Justin Herbert's going to be a much more efficient quarterback by the end of the season. And I think this team will certainly be sitting pretty. Of course, they want to be in the playoffs. I would like to see them in the playoffs too. But I have them just on the outside looking in this time. I have the Chiefs at 13-4.
Ooh, okay.
This is one of the best returning teams that I've ever seen in terms of not just coming back to defend their title, but they're coming back to defend back-to-back titles. And somehow this team got better. I mean, this team is scarier to me this year than they were even last year and the year before that.
They added the fastest wide receiver in the draft.
They added the fastest wide receiver in the draft. They didn't lose anything defensively, which they were already a top 3 to 5 unit, especially at the end of the year. They were like the number 1 defense. And they got Hollywood Brown. They, have a second year Rashee Rice. We'll see when he's able to play. And Xavier Worthy, exactly. Not to mention Kelsey didn't seem to lose much of a step. I mean, and they have a relatively young offensive line for the most part. It's it's scary, man.
Creed Humphrey just got paid. He's a great player.
if there's a team like you said that can do the three-peat, I've never seen one better equipped to do it.
Well,
So
and you
if
forget
they're
the defense.
healthy,
The
I
defense,
feel
Chris
confident.
Jones, Karlaftis up front. It's a really
Yeah.
nasty front. They can rush the passer. They're really solid on the back end. Good linebacker play as well. And Andy Reid. Andy Reid's the best coach in
Yeah, the
football.
greatest tactician and strategist that there is. Yeah, that's a
All right.
tough one to compete with for sure. So
you
we've
have
got
them
them
as the
there. I have
one
them as the
seed, I
one
would
seed.
imagine. Okay.
That is the one seed. Yes.
So do you want me to take the North first, or do you want to go for it, and then I can react to your?
Yeah, I'll go with the North.
All right.
I have the Cleveland Browns in the basement of the division. I have them at 7-10.
Okay.
I have them at 7-10.
Okay.
The best 7-10 team that I can think of in recent memory, but I have them at 7-10. Look, man, I feel like we're all waiting for Deshaun Watson to show that he was remotely worth the $230 million that they paid him. The last good season we saw from Deshaun Watson was in 2020. And I mean, for those who are bad accounting, that's 4 years. So I'm done betting on them getting a full season of production out of him, and I'm also done betting on him returning to form. At best, I see him as being a competent, slightly above average quarterback for this team. The biggest reason for the 7-10, in my view, is Nick Chubb might not play the whole season. He's certainly not going to play for the first 8 to 10 games of the year. I don't have much confidence in this running game. I don't think that they're going to have this Flacco magic that they were able to encapsulate last year. And I don't see Jameis Winston, now the new backup, as being some guy that can insert that. I don't see Deshaun Watson as being able to bring them to that. I have lost confidence in the Browns. I don't think any of this has to do with Kevin Stefanski. I think he was dealt a shit hand.
I like Kevin.
With what the organization did. And I think he's having to sit in it. But he's a great coach. And yes, this is the basement of where they could land, and I have them there, and I understand that. And as a Steelers fan, I'm going to get so much hate for just being like a homer with this pick. But I'll stand on it. I think the Browns are going to be just an average team. Amazing defense. They're going to be a great defense. That's going to keep them in a lot of games. But if we look at their overall situation, it's not pretty. We'll talk about the Steelers, end of the season schedule, which is brutal. The Browns have to play Pittsburgh twice. They have to play Kansas City. They have to play the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Dolphins 6 of the last 7 weeks.
It's not great.
That's really tough. And not to mention, they still got to play the Bengals and Ravens back to back earlier in the season. Then they got to play the Eagles before that. Like this team they're going to have some trouble with this schedule, I think. That brings me to third place. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers come in at third place in the division for me at 9-8. They missed the playoffs. And
but Tomlin's streak is alive.
But Tomlin's streak is alive. He keeps the winning season streak alive and well. And I really do believe that too. I think I've never seen a team where I've like their floor and ceiling is so close. Like I think their floor is 9 wins and their ceiling is like maybe 11, maybe, but likely 10. They're like right there. And so I'm going to have them at their floor. I don't think their floor is below that, to be honest, because one, we've never seen it from Mike Tomlin, and the team is in a better position today than they were last year. So that's really where I get that from. And the defense got better. They got Patrick Queen. They added Patrick Queen to a top 5 defense. I think that's pretty solid. The biggest question for me, obviously, is what are they getting out of the quarterback position? I don't know what Arthur Smith and this offense is going to look like. I like to think that they're going to be much more effective at running the football, and I think they have quarterbacks that can, play within this system. I think Russell Wilson's going to be the starting quarterback, and he'll take care of the football. I know he puts it on the ground sometimes, but in terms of through the air, he doesn't throw many interceptions and had an efficient season last year. I think there's a lot, a lot of optimism around the Steelers offense. But Mark, they have George Pickens, and that's it. I honestly believe Omar Khan thought when they traded Deontay Johnson that he was going to have a deal done in place with some other team for an elite wide receiver by this time. And it hasn't happened. And the Ayuk thing hasn't been set in stone. There were rumors about DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. None of that panned out. And so now they are left with George Pickens and Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and rookie Roman Wilson out of Michigan.
And
a lot of unproven guys in terms and for Pat Freiermuth, which I think he'll have a pretty solid year. Arthur Smith likes his tight ends. They're just going to be again a team that is feisty.
Arthur Smith doesn't like Kyle Pitts, but he likes tight ends.
Well, that's the thing too, is like he did scheme up Kyle Pitts a lot, but also we're talking about Desmond Ritter. Like how much can you have?
He's not on a roster
up
right now.
to
Desmond
get your
Ritter is not on a roster right now.
Yeah, exactly. He got released. So, I mean, I will give him a pass there, but yeah, no, Kyle Pitts definitely underperformed in his tenure, and he has to own some of that. But, no, they're going to run the football a lot, so they're going to be winning. I just don't see them blowing anybody out, and for that reason, they're going to be in a lot of close games. And while Tomlin is good in close games throughout his career, if that's what you're going to live by, you're going to put yourself in a really difficult spot for the entire season and hoping that no injuries come. So that's where it was tough. It's the first time on the show I think I have Pittsburgh not making the playoffs, and so that was difficult for me. But it is what it is, and I think they're right on the cusp, probably fighting, to the very end, but missing out. I have Baltimore coming in at the second spot at 10-7. That one's tough too because I think Baltimore's ceiling is a 13-win team, but gosh, I don't know. At this point, we can't really. The injury concerns are enough to where they're just not an anomaly. They're actually something where you're like, are we going to get a full 16 games out of the combination of Lamar and Mark Andrews and whoever's a running back for them? There's a lot of questions about the strength and conditioning, staff there in Baltimore because they get just riddled with injuries every year. And, they lose Patrick Queen, one of the better middle linebackers in the league. And so they're going to be a perfectly fine team. They're going to be really good. I probably do have them at their floor here. But nonetheless, they get in as the 7 seed in the playoffs. And then I rounded out with the 11-6 Cincinnati Bengals. They'd have more wins on here if their defense wasn't just, their defense is pretty bad.
Average.
Like
they're average.
It's not as bad. Yeah, it's not as bad as I think maybe people are making them out to be. They're not as bad as they were last year,
and that's about it.
But yeah, so there's that. I don't know what's going to happen with the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Like, are they both on the roster by the end of the season? Well, I think that the T. Higgins will probably be traded at some point. What do they have at running back? What do they have, with the tight end room? I don't know. So that's where I have them at. Joe Burrow better stay healthy. If he does, this team can win the division.
Absolutely. Okay. At 4-13. No, just kidding.
You say Pittsburgh Steelers. God, dude.
I was just teasing you. I do have the Steelers at 4th in the division.
Let me just tell you this real quick, Mark. Do you realize that the Steelers have never, ever been 4th in their division?
It's a first for everything because its name is Russell Wilson.
The year after they replaced Kenny Pickett with Russell Wilson?
Well, here's the thing, Dan. When I went through the simulation, the first time I had it came out, I had Pittsburgh just going off the shoot. And again, I did it week by week, not like looking at their schedule, like picking specifically for them. And so I then went back and looked at it and I was like, no. I know Pittsburgh better than that. But off of just the games, I had Pittsburgh as like a 5-win team because of that schedule.
Yeah, no, it's just so brutal.
When you're just going through the schedule, it's like the NFL purposely said, we're going to over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you're
you want to read off like weeks like 11 on?
Like, so
I forgot to mention that.
From at the start of middle of November, it's this is November 17th. It's Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. And I think I had them going
it's
over
terrifying.
through that whole thing. And I was like, okay, well, they're not going to go over through the whole thing, right? They're going to win a game you don't think they're going to win. They'll probably lose a game you think they're going to win, right? So I had to course correct. And I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a 4-game stretch I think is extraordinarily imperative. And I think you'd agree. And it is the Raiders on October 13th. They're at at Vegas. And then it's Raiders, Jets, Giants, Commanders. It's a 4-game stretch. That is the month of October into the first week of November. And they have a bye in there as well to get ready for the Commanders. They have to go 4-0. They have to go 4-0 against the Raiders, the Jets, the Giants, and the Commanders. Like, that is the weakest stretch. They've got to find a way, I don't care who's playing quarterback, for them to run the football and dominate with that defense, beat up Aaron Rodgers. The other games are winnable. Then you have to convince me that they can beat the Cowboys at home on Sunday night. Maybe they can. I think the Chem and the Cowboys are very evenly matched. And then the beginning of the season stuff, I have no idea what I'm getting out of Atlanta. Atlanta's got, I think, equally as good of a roster as Pittsburgh, especially because they have such more offensive talent. I really think the Deontay Johnson trade is going to – you nailed it. The Pittsburgh, where is wide receiver number 2 or wide receiver number 1? Pickens is very good, but Pickens had the benefit of a burner on the other side of Deontay Johnson where you could not roll the safety over to Pickens every play because Deontay Johnson would just go deep and it would just make a move. And I know he didn't score a lot of touchdowns, but he was a yards machine. So I really am concerned about that. I'm really concerned, especially because Russell's strength is throwing the deep ball historically, but we haven't seen it in 2 years. And Justin has a cannon, but let's be honest, it's inaccurate. It's extremely inaccurate at times. I think they have a chance to start 3-1, and they would need to do that. You know, you maybe lose to the Chargers, but you beat the Colts, you beat the Broncos, you beat the Falcons. That would be the best way for Pittsburgh to go forward. But problem with that, Dan, is, again, I believe that Justin's the better choice at quarterback. And I think they're going to start Russell. So I don't think Russell's going 3-1 against Falcons, Broncos, Steelers, Colts. I don't think he's doing it because I haven't seen Russell do a stretch like that in over 2.5 years. And I mean it in almost 3 years because that last year with Seattle was the injury. He got injured early, broke the thumb, and he was never the same. Remember, he rushed back. Ever since he rushed back from the thumb injury, he hasn't been the same. It pains me. I have them at 7-10. I agree with you. They're a better football team. The defense is elite. I agree with you. Their ceiling is 10 wins. The problem is right now, I have so much faith in Mike Tomlin. You know, I like Mike. I think the organization is solid. I think the defense is incredible. The offensive line, I have questions. I think they are very limited at their weapons besides Pickens and Najee. And Muth is a good tight end, but he's a traditional tight end. He's not Laporta. I don't even think he's Cole Kmet as far as exploding down the field and his range and everything. It worries me that stretch of games at the end of the year is tough, and I could see them late in the year if they make the move to just at the wrong time or they stick with Russell for too long, that it can get out of hand and that schedule's bad. I have them at 7-10, and I have the Browns at 8-9 at 3. And why I have the Browns over the Steelers, I think for me, when I looked at it all and I was trying to calculate this, like, do I agree with this? I think it comes down to the fact that offensively, the Cleveland Browns have more to work with. They have more to work with. And I think that Deshaun Watson, while I don't trust him, like I don't trust Russell and I don't trust Justin, he doesn't have to worry about a quarterback controversy. Deshaun Watson's not in a quarterback controversy until they're 0-6 or 0-7 or they're in hell. And I don't think they're going to be that because their schedule is workable at the beginning of the year. I don't love the Browns, though. I really think the Browns' ceiling is 9 wins. And I have them just below that at 8. I have the Ravens at number 2, and they're at 11-6. I like the Ravens a ton. I agree with you. I think this is a team that's not as high of a ceiling as last year's team, but I think they're a team that at times will look more like a Super Bowl team. I actually think the Ravens' chances to Henry. Yes, I think the Ravens' chances to win the Super Bowl are actually higher this year, but their production offensively and their wins during the regular season is slightly down. I know that's crazy, but remember, September and October are not January and February. And I think the Ravens are really built for January and February. If if Lamar Jackson can finally get over the hump that he has and struggles in the biggest of games. And all I can say about Lamar is at least he's been there, right? He's been in those big games. He's been in a couple of them. He hasn't played well, but he's been in them. So eventually you hope, like Peyton Manning, he's going to find his way. He's going to get his win. It might be this year. I think they could be the wild card team that it's like they could find their way into a AFC championship game, maybe even a Super Bowl if things break their way the right way. I'm with you. I have the Bengals winning the division. I have them at 12-5. It's all Burrow. It's all Chase. It's all T. Higgins. Chase is not paid yet. CeeDee Lamb got paid. We didn't talk about the top of the show, but CeeDee got paid.
The team said that they are expecting Chase there for week 1, but that was an interesting thing because, like, why? Like, it's almost like they're pressuring to be like.
He's been a good soldier. Him and T. Higgins have both been good soldiers during the offseason. This offensive line for the Bengals, I think, got better. Joe Burrow is. When Joe Burrow had to rehab the previous 2 times where he missed time in camp, because he didn't miss any camp time this year, which I think is really crucial. And the last time he didn't miss any camp time, he made it to the Super Bowl. But the previous 2 injuries, this is his 3rd big injury, but the previous 2 injuries were like good God, like you need to become a human and then play football. This was a wrist injury. He physically, the rest of his body, 120% to go to start the year. And it was one little ligament in his wrist. Like shit happens. I don't like it sucks, but it is what it is. I think Joe Burrow is going to be good to go. I think there's a Joe Burrow revenge tour. I think Joe Burrow's numbers are better than maybe everyone in the leagues this year. I just don't think he's an MVP.
He's in the MVP running.
I don't think he's an MVP winner though, because the storyline of Allen doing close to the numbers and the wins with less talent is more intriguing for us as fans and writers. So, in conclusion, I have the number 1 overall seed is the Chiefs. The number 2 overall seed is the Bills. 3, the Bengals. 4, I go to the Jags. 5 is the Texans. 6 gets the Ravens. And 7 is the Jets. They sneak in, and Aaron Rodgers goes on this kind of rewriting history tour that he's been on. Really sucks. I think the Dolphins, the Chargers are right there. And then I think, again, Browns, Steelers, they're extremely close. Colts, extremely close. Could be really surprising teams. It would not shock me at all if I'm talking about the Browns, Steelers, or Colts in the playoffs. It wouldn't shock me at all. I think the only thing I know for sure is that the Dolphins and the Broncos and the Raiders are not making the playoffs. Like, that's the only thing I can
And you feel that confident in the Dolphins missing?
Oh no, sorry. Patriots, Broncos, and Raiders. Patriots, Broncos, and Raiders are not making the playoffs.
Yeah,
and the Chiefs are going to win their division.
Yep. No, we're in the same agreement. I have the Chiefs as the 1, Bills 2, Bengals 3, Texans 4, Jets 5, Jags 6, and the Baltimore Ravens as the 7th seed. So we have the same teams in the playoffs, just a little bit different order there. But overall, a lot of agreement in our AFC standings. So that was fun.
Do we have anyone not make it? We have the same exact playoff teams, don't we?
We have the same exact playoff lineup.
So if I were to tell you, you have to make a change, what change would you make?
What team would I remove?
That's the key. I would remove the Jets.
That's hard. Yeah, that's hard. I would probably remove. I think I would actually remove. Probably the Jags. I would probably
you go Jags.
I would probably take the Jags over the Jets. To miss, and then I'd probably put Pittsburgh in, to be honest. Like I mean Pittsburgh's my 8th seed, so I have them right on the cusp there.
I would eliminate the Jets and add the Chargers. I think late in the season the Chargers could really pile some wins together once Harbaugh gets everything going. Once they put everything together. Now, can I ask you at what? Really quickly on the Steelers, just talk it through me right now. If they are 7-10, like I predicted, how are they 7-10? How do the wheels fall off? How does Tomlin lose his streak? What is to you your biggest concern here? Less than 10 days before the season kicks off, or about 10 days.
Well, I think I legitimately feel pretty comfortable that Arthur Smith is going to call good games He's a grown-up play caller.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it, I feel stable in. I don't know how great it's gonna be, but I don't think it's gonna be a complete disaster. So it really comes down to execution. How they do it is George Pickens gets hurt, and then they have zero receivers on the team. I mean, Van Jefferson, your number one receiver. That's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Um, or George Pickens is just effectively removed from games because defenses are somehow able to take him away, and the run game isn't working because offensive line injuries or they're not being cohesive enough. If this team can't run the football at a top 5 rate this year, it's gonna be a big problem because they have to.
Trouble.
They have to be, and
what's
that's
his
how
name?
they're gonna get George Pickens those deep balls.
Yeah.
Because Arthur Smith is amazing at dialing up play action pass, but to work with play action, you have to have the run actually be an effective tool.
Remind me of the backup running back, the little guy.
Jalen Warren is really good.
Warren,
yeah. But he's hurt. He's hurt to start the year. He's got a hamstring. He'll probably be ready week 1, but not great to start the year with already
because they became a
nagging
really
hamstring.
good 1-2 punch, Najee and Jalen Warren.
Yeah,
at the end of the year.
legitimately, this offense, they could have the top rushing unit in the league. Like that is their ceiling. Najee can go for 1,100 yards and Jalen Warren adds 800 on the ground. Like I could see that, and then
they're going to need it.
Going old school with it. But that's how they're going to lose.
I think if
they're
Justin
not having
Fields,
an effective run game.
Who starts more games, Fields or Wilson?
I think Russ starts more games this year, because I think the wheels have to fall off completely, and I think Russ is going to be effective enough at running this offense.
That's going to be the tough thing. Is Russ will be, and people will be like, he's not the reason we're losing games. Yeah. He's not the reason we're winning games. That's killer.
I think the problem with Justin, like I do like the idea of Justin more because he can give you that extra spark.
Well, yeah,
but I still do worry about. Yes, like I just worry about those game-breaking mistakes that I don't think even Russ now is going to be making, especially because I do think he's going to have support from a decent run game.
So let me pose this. Russ starts against Atlanta.
Yeah.
They offense struggles. Maybe he doesn't throw a touchdown, throws one pick. He's like 13 of 26, 27. Atlanta holds them to rushing the ball. It just looks sloppy, and Atlanta wins at home. It's in Atlanta, right?
It's in Atlanta, yeah.
Atlanta wins at home, 24-10. Like, are you calming the waters with Steelers fans, or are you saying fuck it, throw Justin in?
No, I'm calming the waters. I think you got to give them, because everything's so new. We got a lot of new pieces. We got a young offensive line. We got
the Atlanta game. The Atlanta game's not the one you have to win early in the year. It's not the one you have to win.
I feel like they should win it, but correct. Like it's not do or die. It's just a new coordinator, a new quarterback, a new line with two new starting linemen, and a completely new system. Like I think there's going to be plenty of excuses for why they lost 24-10 if that's the case. They go to Denver the next week, and you could have the excuse of playing in Denver. Like we haven't been at home yet this year.
Russ revenge game.
I think it's by the home game against the Chargers the following week 3. If we haven't seen anything by that time,
if Russ struggles
you're getting booed in front of your fans,
and they're 0-3,
yeah,
after a Chargers loss.
That's the point, because I also they go back on the road in the dome, play the Colts. Like that would be a good time to insert Justin, and then he gets to come back home for the Cowboys and then the Raiders. Like not the hardest stretch of the schedule. If you end up inserting Justin in that back half, good Lord,
Godspeed to any
I think Russell will end up. I think they're going to be just good enough that Russell's going to start just over half of the season if it comes to that, and maybe the whole season. But
I feel like if you have them at 9 wins, that's Russell starting the majority of the year.
Yeah. Nope. I think that's I think they do just enough.
I think
just
Justin
enough,
starts. I think
but not
Justin
enough.
starts. I think Justin starts the majority of the year. I've lost all confidence in Russ.
I also
I'm
like I totally welcome it because I feel like both quarterbacks are like so different in what they provide to the team that
for our show and for content wise, I'm kind of hoping like
it'd
an
be great.
ugly blowout loss to the Denver Broncos. They're 0-2, and Russ looked horrible in his revenge game. And then it's just like, fuck it, throw Justin in. You gave Russell his revenge game. He sucked. Throw Justin
Yeah.
in. Let's just go crazy and have Justin rush for 1,200 yards with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren and just let's let it ride.
For sure. I'm all about it. All for
No, you're not. You want to start 2-0. It's okay.
it. No, look, I'm for anything happening. It's almost like anarchy. Like,
Yeah.
dude, I just wanna see some stuff happen.
I'm
So
sneaky
if
talking
Russ is
myself.
doing well and playing well, then let's go. Let's let it ride. But
I get you. I'm sneaky talking myself into the Bears starting 2-0 and beating the Texans Sunday Night Football. Like, in the whole world being like,
that'd be pretty sweet.
the whole world being like, Caleb Williams is insane. Like, he's him, and me being like, yeah, he's him.
Yeah, well, and it's not out of the realm of possibility either.
And it's on Sunday night, prime time. Like, everyone's saying, can he be CJ Stroud? CJ Stroud was so good last year. Like, I'm so ready to like just bite into that steak, and I'm ready to just like, let's go Sunday Night Football week 2.
Let's go. Well, we got our 2 previews done, so we have our lineups. We'll be posting, the pictures of our 2 predictions, NFC, AFC, out there on social media soon, so you all can review it and give us some of that feedback. But we're not going to be here at the early parts of next week, so still TBD on next week before the actual NFL season kicks off next Thursday. It's already
we'll have
here.
Something next week, but it probably won't be Monday or Tuesday.
Yep. So we'll figure that out, and we'll be there. So just keep us on the radar. But until then, this has been the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. We'll see you next time when football is just on the horizon.